Greetings, my people. It's Judge Dawson, and today I want to talk to you about transitions. Transitions. Now, some of you know, obviously, I'm a judge. I've been on the bench for over 9 years. I feel it's a calling, it's my mission to help people navigate the legal system and break cycles. But I don't often talk about the fact that in order to break cycles, in order to move to that next level of your greatness, we have to master the ability to transition because you can't go from one level to the next level without the proper transition. Now, remember, when we're talking about being a cycle breaker, there are 4 elements of being a cycle breaker. The first one is you have to recognize the need for change. And, this can't be mentioned enough because we tend to get complacent as people. We tend to get used to situations. And in fact, we get to the point where we don't feel there needs to be change at all because we're so used to doing what we're doing. We're so used to seeing what we're seeing. Just think about it. There was a time when you'd hear a gunshot in the neighborhood or the hood, as we call it, and you jump. It's getting to the point now where you hear a gunshot and you're like, oh, yeah, that was a gunshot. Because we've gotten used to it. We've gotten desensitized. Let me give you another example. Politics aside, there was a time where if a president said something like, grab him by the, we would be shocked and that person may even lose their job. But at this point, we're so desensitized to the negative rhetoric that we hear in media that our president can even say stuff like, if he stood in the middle of New York street, Times Square, and shot somebody, he would still be elected. That was shocking many years ago, but today it's not. So that leads me back to the point. In order to be a cycle breaker, we have to recognize the need for change, and we cannot be lured into the temptation to get used to chaos and to get used to nonsense. So step number 1, recognize the need for change. Step number 2 is commit to breaking the cycle. It's not enough to say, you know what, we need to change that, or she needs to change the way she's acting. We have to commit to being a part of breaking the cycle. And that takes us stepping out of our normal, stepping out of our comfort zone, and getting involved with somebody else's situation, or getting involved in our own situation for the purpose of changing it. So the next step is you have to commit to breaking the cycle. The third element of being a cycle breaker is then you have to get the tools that are necessary to break the cycle. Look, there is no way you're going to be able to accomplish some of your goals, some of the dreams you have, or even overcome some of the challenges that you have if you don't get the right tools to do it. Simple as that. We've been living our lives for far too long, doing the same thing over and over again. And in order to change, you may need someone to give you the tools to help you change. So in order to be a cycle breaker, the third step is you have to get the tools to change. The fourth step of being a cycle breaker is to have that grit, that deep down inside hustle mentality that is telling you and telling the world that you will not quit. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how much you're tempted by what you used to do or what people want you to do, once you recognize the cycle that you want to break, you have to hang in there. In fact, you have to grind in there. Get to the point where you won't be swayed or deterred. Stay in there because I'm telling you, when you decide to break cycles, when you decide to move to another level, when you decide to make a transition that we're talking about today, the temptation to go back to what you were doing is going to be strong. The temptation to quit is going to be strong. So don't do it. Number 4, being a cycle breaker, is hang in there when the going gets tough. Let's go. All right, we're talking about transitions. And as a yoga teacher, transitions is something that I do all the time because in order to move from one pose to the next pose, you have to move in a certain series of steps to get you there. Now, the reason that this talk is so important is because transitioning and doing it properly, you would think it's obvious. You would think everybody knows how to do it, but in fact, not everyone knows how to do it. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? But it's not easy. And I'll tell you from my yoga perspective, how do I know it's not easy? Well, if you're in a class or you're teaching a class and you notice that you tell someone to do something, but they don't know how to get there, what they are missing is the proper transition from one step to the other. And that's where you have to be a great instructor or a great leader to help a person move from one space to another. So that's why transitioning is so very important. And that's from a physical standpoint. Even if you're running, even if you're jogging, if you're doing karate, whatever it is you're doing, transitioning is so important. Let me break it down to something that we often see in our neighborhoods or on TV. Playing basketball, right? You don't just transition from a slam dunk to a three-pointer. What happens is there are steps you have to take in between, and you have to take those steps carefully so that you don't injure yourself. So what do? You go for the slam dunk, but then you glance down at the floor, you place your body down on the floor, you land correctly, you turn, pivot, then you move, right? That's how you do it. Because if you're not doing it like that, the result will be an injury. So even in sports, transitioning from one stage or from one step to the other is so very important. And especially when we bring it down to life. Life's transitions can often be the hardest. When someone is telling you, you need to transition out of this relationship. Why? Well, because that person has decided to move on. That person has decided to let you down. So now you got to figure out, how do you transition to the next phase or the next relationship? And if you don't transition properly, you're going to hang on a little too long. You're going to stay in there. You're going to cause damage to you, your future, and possibly to other people around. Who are those other people? Your family, your friends, and God forbid, your kids. We don't want our children to see us struggling when we don't have to let them see it. So if we're able as adults to make sure that they don't witness our craziness and our struggling, then we have an obligation to make sure that they don't. And that's why we're talking about properly transitioning. Let me give you an example of not properly transitioning. The relationship is over, but instead of just leaving and the two people going their separate ways, there's domestic violence. Let's speak from a woman's standpoint. You tell him to get his things and get out, but on the way out, you're breaking his things. So now, as opposed to just a person moving out, you may be faced with a property damage claim, a criminal complaint, and maybe even domestic violence if it gets to that level. That is an example of not properly transitioning to the next phase. And that's just talking about relationships. Even if you are on an educational level, maybe you haven't achieved what you want to achieve educationally. Maybe you don't even have your GED or high school diploma. You're going to have to figure out what is the best way for you to transition into that next phase. How do you move from not having a degree to getting a degree, or at least getting a diploma? And then if you are already in college and you're facing a crossroads in your occupation or your career and you want to get to the next level, now all of a sudden you have to start figuring out, okay, how do I transition to my next level? Do I go back to school? And what are the steps to do it? Do I have enough money? Do I have to apply for a loan? What am I going to do? That's what we're talking about, that middle step in between where you are and where you want to be. That is what we're referring to when we talk about transitioning. All right, here we go. I have 8 steps that will guide you to a proper transition. And these 8 steps apply to life, relationships, getting off probation, avoiding negative interaction with the legal system, yoga, any fitness program. It's all the same because these are principles, and the principles will remain when everything else disappears. So let's go. Number 1, find your breath right where you are. Now, if you've been familiar with me, you know I talk about breath all the time because it is so important to our calmness, our life, and our ability to react in the current moment. If you're out of breath, it's almost like you're out of energy. Or if you cannot tap into your breath, you can't calm your body down. So the first step to transition, believe it or not, right where you are right now, take a deep breath in and relax. That's step number 1. Number 2, find your balance right where you are. Right where you are, find your balance. See, here's what happens. We are so eager to transition to the next stage or the next phase that we don't even plant our feet firmly where we are right now. So again, if you're in a physical fitness situation, basketball, football, yoga practice, whatever it is, plant right where you are right now. Get firm where you are. Breathe, and then we'll move to the next phases of this transition. If you are transitioning into a different area of your life, plant where you are right now. So for instance, let's say you want to get your GED because you don't have it. Right now, firmly establish, where am I? I am without a GED and I want to get one. Or where am I? I've gotten this degree and now I want to go back and get another one. You have to firmly establish where you are, plant where you are before you begin to move. If you are in a relationship that is ending and that you need to get out of because maybe it's toxic, you need to establish right where you are the situation. Because if you don't acknowledge the situation, you won't have the strength to move to the next phase of the transition. If you don't acknowledge that, hey, I am in a garbage relationship or I am in a toxic relationship, and if I don't get out soon, somebody's going to be destroyed. Somebody's life is going to be destroyed. So don't gloss past the part of establishing and being honest with where you are right now. That's the next step of your transition. Number 3, before you move, seek the path of the least resistance. Now, sometimes that statement alone can go against everything that we're taught, right? We're taught to fight it out, don't give up, take the hard road because, I had to walk through 30 inches of snow to get to school when I was born back in the day. I mean, we've heard those stories, right? So sometimes we think that it's important to do the hard work, and it is. But hard work doesn't mean it can't be smart work. There was a person that used to work in my court who kind of trained me when I became a new judge, and he would always say, his name was Wayne Glenn, work smarter, not harder. So in order to transition, we need to look for the path of least resistance. Let's start with your physical practice. If you're doing yoga or something like that, and you want to move from one pose to the next, in your mind, think about it. Okay, if I want to get here, what are the steps that will get me there so that I'm not flipping over on my head? If you are in a basketball situation or football, and you know the play you want to run, you have to figure out the exact steps to complete the pass, right? Or make the shot. There are steps. You don't just get the ball and just all of a sudden you have 2 points. There's steps, but you have to figure them out. Again, like I said, if you're in a relationship and you know that relationship is one that you have to get out of, what are the steps? Think about it. What's the path of least resistance? And I really want to say, when you are in a toxic relationship, one that has to end because one of the parties are treating the other one terribly, or it's a domestic violence situation, that's when you really have to be firm in your ability to move on, and you have to be really strategic on how you get out. If you've ever been in a domestic violence situation, you know that leaving is not only hard, but it's dangerous because emotions are involved and sometimes people just don't want to let go. So for you and I in these situations, we have to figure out, which way can I get out that will be the path of the least resistance? Do I move slowly over a period of time? Do I set up that new apartment and change my address and my mailing address a week or two or a month or maybe a year before I move? And sometimes you don't even have that type of time. But if you have the luxury of that time, plan it out. Who are going to be your resources, your contact person, your safety net? Is the prosecutor on notice? Have you filed for a protection order? All these things, map them out. But it goes back to anything that you want to do in life. If you're transitioning to a new job, let's not leave it on the negative part. What about a new job? What about a new business? What are the steps? And think of the path of least resistance. And let me give you a tip here. Oftentimes, when you are trying to get into a new profession, a new job, or even start a new business, your path of least resistance is to ask somebody who's been doing it. Why is it so hard for us to ask for help when there are so many people who are willing to help you? Let me tell you why. Because people like talking about themselves. So if you ask me, Judge Dawson, how do I become a judge? And if I have the time, I'm going to tell you everything I did to become a judge. Same thing about the man, or, when it applies to the man who opened up the corner store. You go in there one day, you're respectful, and you say, you know what steps did you move through to get this store open? Best believe he's going to want to tell you, because that's what we do as people. We talk about ourselves. So ask the questions so that you can find the path of least resistance. Number 4, move slowly. Look, you don't have to be in a rush to get to that next level. It's going to happen. Why? Because you already set your intention on it happening. So you don't have to rush now. Now is the time when you need to move slowly. So especially if you're doing something like yoga or a new physical fitness move, don't rush into it, because I guarantee you, rushing can lead to injury. Same thing with transitioning out of relationships, new businesses, whatever it is. When you rush, you may make mistakes, and those mistakes could lead to injury. What kind of injury? Maybe physically your body's going to be injured because you didn't do the right thing. Maybe you didn't know exactly how to navigate leaving, and you two got into another fight before you left, and there's injury. Or maybe you started that new business and you rushed into it without asking for advice, and now the injury is a financial injury because you're losing money. So the key is move slow, move with intention, so that you know exactly where you're going. Number 5, settle into your new space. So what I mean by that is, once you move into this new transition, this new area, wherever it is, get settled, get grounded. Number 6 is find your breath. So I'll put those together, 5 and 6. Get settled into that new space and breathe. Really. This is your new area. It may be temporary. It may be one move before you get to the next move, but relax in that move. Settle into that space. If you went from one pose to the next, settle into that space. Don't move too fast. Enjoy the moment, because we know that transitions happen all the time, and before you know it, you're on to the next one. So settle into the space. Take a deep breath in. Let's do it together. And exhale. Number 7, Find your balance in this space. So now that you're there, now the key is to say, you know what, I am here and I'm going to find a way to get my life back together or to keep this practice moving forward or to stand firm in this new pose that I just entered. See, all of these things are interrelated. When you talk about success and you talk about moving to the next level, it's all interrelated. I don't care if you're doing yoga or if you are doing relationships. It's all important. And number 7, to transitioning properly is to find your balance in that new place, that new space. What's there? What's going to give you the most stability? Who can you keep on your team? Who do you need to eliminate? Your balance is so very important. And the last one, number 8, is once you have established your balance, once you have breathed in the new energy and your breath is strong and you're ready, once you've actually moved slowly into the new position and you're there and you're stable, you've made the plans, you've moved, everything is intact, now it's time to expand. If you're doing yoga, you know what that means. That means stretch, extend. If you're doing life, guess what it means? The same thing. Stretch, extend, see how far you can go. Go to your highest level. Go to your limit, right to that edge, and then go a little bit past it. Why? Because you'll never know how far you can go and how great you can be until you take it right to the limit. So I'm telling you, while you're in your phase of transition, those 8 steps can take you far no matter where you're trying to transition from. And remember, we are always transitioning. Life is totally changing every single day. It's a new year coming up soon, new leadership, new people in your family, new people you're going to meet, new opportunities for you. Take it all positive. Transitions do not have to be bad, especially if you take those 8 steps, because the early ones get you grounded and you're dealing with, whatever tragedy or whatever opportunity, and you know exactly what you're doing. But as you move forward through the transitional steps, the light turns on and you know that life is going to be better and you're going to be able to be the best that you can be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the session for today. It's Judge Dawson, the cycle breaker, the yogi judge, and all I ever try to do is bring you information that you can use. Look, I've been living a long time. I have a lot of wisdom. If I don't share it, what am I going to do with it? That's my obligation, to spread it to the world. That's my mission. And whatever yours is, be the absolute best that you can be. And I'll see you next time.